Hey, what's up everyone? This is Erica for the Creation Station at Southeast Steuben County Library. That is our makerspace, free and open to everyone. Bring your own materials or pay a small donation to the library for materials you might need. Today we're learning how to sew a small, handy, travel-sized pincushion. Pardon me. It is going to look something like this. So let's see if with my magic wand we can point out individually. So very simple shapes. This is very beginner friendly. If you're just learning to sew, this is a wonderful starting project. And I wanted to count down very simply. This will be no more, should be no more than 8, where is my magic wand? 8 total stitches. We'll see if I'm correct. It will lay out flat to about an 8-inch circle, opens up, holds all of your sewing needs on the go, and can even have pockets with it behind the lining there to stow away some threads. Maybe even beads or other bric-a-brac that might be going in your project that might be worked on your lap. It folds up nice and tidy and then seals with a little button of Velcro, but we will top it off with a button for decoration. So let's look at our table here to look at some of the materials that we'll need. To get started, you need to create a pattern. I will have these available in PDF format for you to borrow, download and cut out on your own. But if you wanted to save paper, as you see I have, use up an old calendar. Meow. And what we'll do, I suggest using compass. If you don't have one of these, you can find some circles around the house. Look for an 8-inch circle. This is a 6-inch circle, so you can, if you have this from perhaps your coffee can, trace this for your pattern. So that's the inside pattern here that you'd make, and then you would lay it out on a piece of paper, mark an inch extended from there or 2 to get your 8-inch circle, which is here. Okay, so there you cut the circle, and then you have this floral little petal shape, and you achieve that. So I've already done it on this piece, but it's pretty easy. And this is only if you are creating the pattern from scratch at your home today or sometime in the near future. So you fold your circle in half. Let's see, I'm going, whoop, hi! Wow, it's a little bunchy. Okay, so fold it in half, half again, and half again, and this is like the individual petal, so you need to just cut a little edge here and here. But if you want to have that exact, or pretty darn close, you can even try and fold this one extra time. So you just will have to do one snip. Make sure you grab your paper scissors here. We didn't go across the whole table, but I'll tell you my rules about paper and fabric scissors in a moment, if you don't know them already. And then we'll just do, careful with your hands. One little snip here and a curve. Pop. It's almost like making a snowflake. Boom. So there are 2 pattern pieces for the main body of our travel case, pincushion, and then here's the flap. So then this flap is 3.5 inches long by 2.5 inches wide, And then you start to see that I have some instructions there, but we'll get to those in a moment. So this, you can see, has an outer lining fabric and an inner lining fabric, which is basically felt. So we have some solid felt and my outer lining fabric that I've chosen. And then you know from these, your pattern pieces, okay, so this is the outside layer. I'll need to cut 2 of these of fabric, and I'll need to cut 1 of these of a lining to make it a little more stiff. So I'll use a color felt that I'm not so fond of as my lining to stiffen it up, and 2 of these, 2 layers of this. As well as I'll mimic exactly the same with this. I'll cut two pieces of fabric for the flap and 1 piece of felt for the flap. So you can kind of count these 2 pieces as the same type of idea. They'll be connected soon. All right. And then your liner, if you decide you want to go bright and funky, or could even quilt these 2 pieces together to give you a little bulkier finished project, but it would give you multiple pocket ability. And so then you would also need some marking tools for your fabric. Pincushion, or pins. I already have this wonderful home pincushion. Some thread trimmers, paper scissors, and fabric scissors. You only cut paper with paper scissors, and you only cut fabric with fabric scissors. They will become dull, fabric scissors, if you work them on paper. So the more you love your tools and treat them appropriately, the longer they'll last. That compass and a ruler. The ruler is your handy dandy guide for getting work done. And I always recommend a handy magic wand to rule the world. Okay. So let's mark off, clear our workspace with our tools, set everything aside. One thing I forgot, we will have to turn our fabric around, so you might have one of these in your stash from your grandma that you're not sure what to do with all these things. I believe this is called a bodkin. Correct me if I'm wrong. Just a tool that's going to help turn the fabric and stuff it out. You'll see what I mean in the future. There's this fun tool I just got for Christmas called that purple thing. My friends at the Emmanuel Lutheran Church in Corning will appreciate that. We had our little sewing circle going on there a few years ago, and I certainly miss them. All right. Oh yeah, before we get too far into business, we will also have a piece of Velcro, a button, and you guessed it, some thread, a threaded needle. I am looking to create this little set as some make and takes, or take and makes, whatever we want to call these days in the libraries, so that you can actually put this knowledge to fruition and practice at your home. You know, everything will be cut out for you and made super fancy and easy. But what won't be, in my hope, to get people to learn how to sew again, right? Hand sewing is, I guess, one of those things everybody should know how to do, because we all have to fix a snag, and you will have to sew a button on this project. So I'm going to bring back some old-fashioned home economics, is what they called it in my day. What do we call it now? Family science, family consumer sciences. This is beeswax. If you slide your thread, glide it through the beeswax, it will glide through your fabric easier. You want to make sure your thread, can we see that? It's a little out of focus. Well, let's see what we can do in this technology world. Boop, boop, boo. Do you see me? No? Let's get this out of the way. It really wants to focus on anything out there but me. The fun world. There we go. All right, so your eyes can now see. I do the gross grandma thing, the gross seamstress thing, the thing you're not supposed to be doing right now in a pandemic. I put my my mouth on this string. You gotta lick the string, and then you wet the end of the needle. I promise you, people, this is like a magic trick. See that? The moisture, the liquid just seems like a little bit of a magnet, and magically goes through there. All right, so then you guide the two together, two ends. I cut this thread about arm's length. Anything less is usually annoyingly short, unless you're a thread miser. I have been known to do so. Okay, so Mrs. Rodit, I hope you're watching. We always called this needle, we're going to rocket school here, we're going to fuel it up. So the needle is the rocket, and you're basically pinching the needle with one hand and pinching the thread with another. So you bring the fuel, which is the two tips of thread, to your thumb, which is pinching the needle, and also pinch that thread in place. So you're holding the needle and those two tips of thread. On track? Give me a holla! All right, so now we need to give the thread, give the rocket 5 liters, 5 rounds of fuel. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. See, I've wrapped the thread around the needle 5 times. I'm keeping this nice and tight, and I'm still pinching that thread with my right hand. Now the rocket has to get ready for launch, so I'm going to shift everything to my left hand. So I'm slowly guiding, pinching, and gliding those coils down and meeting. This does take a little practice, but your fingers are definitely bigger than everything going on there, the materials. Just transfer over. So now the rocket has met into my left hand. It's ready for takeoff. I'm going to let go of the thread there. I'm only holding on to what we call the fuel and the rocket end. It's ready for takeoff. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now see, this is what I'm happy to see. Now, because I waxed the thread, it only got coiled a little, but I'll use my pinky to make sure that nothing gets further tangled, so the rocket can have a successful exit or entry into outer space. And so right now, if you're doing this at home, there's the magic happening right there. There's some magic going on. Oh, boom. See that knot? Magic. You're welcome, Mrs. Rodit. You made a difference in my life. Okay. Enough honoring my old school lessons. So then we'll just store that over here. Move our tools to the side. And let's begin cutting out our fabric and following the pattern instructions. I've pre-washed, pre-ironed my fabric. This is some lovely silk screen and decomposed. All these terms that I did, and this is fabric that I made in college. So all that work is my own. So this will be pretty fun to finally get to use in another format. These were curtains at one point. Okay, so can we see? Yes, we can. So I have a seam here because this used to be a curtain, and I don't really want to use that seam. But I want to make sure that when you're using your fabric, you're using it to its fullest extent. I always see people, okay, let's cut a piece of fabric, let's cut a pattern, and they lay it smack dab in the center, and then they trace, and then they cut, and then there's this hole in the center, and wow, what a waste of fabric. What a waste of materials. Be mindful of your materials so that you can have them for further use, or in case you make mistakes, or scrap quilts. Okay, so let's see. A colored pencil works really great here for marking the fabric. You could also use a Sharpie, which I have here, and might actually take a lot less time to mark the fabric. Since all these edges will be tucked in and tucked away, it's okay. Now what I would be doing and should be doing is folding this in half. And I forgot to talk to you about right sides together. Okay, so we're going to cut the fabric out here. What I've done for this outer layer, we need two pieces of this outer layer. So I folded the fabric in half. If you have right side, you can tell a right side to a wrong side, like a pattern. I'm looking around for something here. But, you know, if you have something that's obviously a print on the outside and the other is the dull side, the print is the right side. I hope you know the right sides versus your wrong side of your fabric. That's what I mean. So you would fold your fabric right sides together to just keep it that way, because that's the way we'll sew it. And make sure that you're getting your fabric, your pattern on the very edge of your fabric, so that you're not wasting and cutting a hole in the center. Using a marker, mark your edges. Sound effects are free. Oh, I think this whole tutorial is free. Now, I wouldn't recommend Sharpie in most cases because it stinks. You definitely will have this smell in your fabric for a while unless you cut it out. But it is quick for this demonstration purpose, right? You see that it's bold. Let's go ahead and cut the other piece. Now, I'm just thinking about where would be best without wasting too much fabric, and I think it's going to be right about there. Okay. Trace that out. And I know that I need to cut that in half. So I'm just tracing a little line there. Okay, so there's the outer layer there. And then we cut one of the lining. Okay. There we go. Trace that out. First Wednesday of 2021. And we were doing some Sew Wednesdays over the summer. I did a series called Work With What You Got with Jessie Beardsley. That was pretty fun. And now we're working with a different What We Got. Okay, so there's our liner. I'll cut these out in shortly once I have all my pattern pieces prepared. And then I want to decide, do I want, all right, keep my pattern pieces very protected because I want to make more of these. Do I want that bright liner or do I want that? I think this pops. I like the black. Let's stick with that. And that is why I have this white pencil, because this will be easier to mark and trace my pattern on black fabric for at least my viewers out in the tube to see the contrast. If you were here with me in my studio and we were working on a class together in real world, you might be able to see the mark of Sharpie. Then again, it's stinky, so maybe you don't want it. You know, whatever works for you with what you got. Ooh. Okay, you can see that. Okay. Toss that to the side. So there, we can start our cutting. This will probably go in fast mode. Whatever works for you. I usually try to cut away the bulk of the material. So remember, this was just a circle, so once you have the outer line, you can just start going, snipping around. Doo-doo-doo. Would have been easier to do this with just that paper trick I showed you, so now that you know it, you could follow along that way and not torture yourself like I'm doing right now. Okay, it's a little folded. Always iron your fabric, wash and iron your fabric before you start working with it. It is always dirty for straight from the store. Now I'm gonna make sure that we're in view. Learning this camera stuff, guys. Learning it, keeping it on a budget for everybody. So. You know, make a mess now, clean it up later, right? Okay, so there's the first one. And it'll go a little faster. Actually, yeah. Okie dokie. So we had a little technical difficulty with the scissors there, but I did cut the two pieces of fabric, the outer fabric and then the lining fabric. I have them placed together overlapping, and I forgot to cut one layer of the lining fabric for the pull tabs, so we'll go ahead and cut that out for you. Boom. Snip off the seams, clean up our space, and then show you that I just removed the pins. Place them safely somewhere. And now what we'll be able to do is pin these pieces now to get ready for traveling to the sewing machine. Alright, so when you prepare, you're going to have to turn this out. We're going to sew 3 seams here. Okay, where are we? There we are. Hi! Right around here. And when you pin, you want to pin through all the layers, attach that back, and then come back out the front so that your pins are perpendicular to the edge of your fabric, so that when you run through, it's easier to run through the sewing machine. You'll see in just a moment. Now, you can pin usually about 1 inch to 2 inches apart, just making sure you are secure and comfortable. I have been sewing for a very long time, so I usually use a little fewer pins. If you are scared of pins, I know people are. I know I've had a few students that are. I keep these around. There are these bigger ones, these fabric clips, and there are also these littler ones. They're just they're a little expensive at the store. You can get them onto the online conglomerate monster if you need. I did, but hey, they're handy for me. They sew easier. They can. What are these things? Just giving you options. I know there's some sensory people who might be interested in knowing these things. So hey, clothespin, secure it. Maybe not even sensory issues. If you have needle concerns, you probably aren't sewing, but I'm just trying to keep an open mind here. The clothespins sometimes are at people's homes, not so much as frequently as they used to be. Sometimes I think I'm living in the 50s of that last century still. Yeah, whatever I just said, people. So here we go. We've stitched pinned all the way around. And now we'll also pin our edges of the outer layer. But remember, we're going to have to keep one side open. So I believe I'll be keeping this side open. I just want to make sure the edges are matching properly, which can be an issue or a concern when you turn things around. So just make sure everything's aligning properly. Does it feel like it isn't? Probably because I'm on camera. Okay, so let's pause there. Once you've pinned all of your pieces together, you'll want to keep an open space for turning it around. So I use these clips for that as a notification for myself, and I can still keep everything pinned nice and tidy as I prefer. I even like to get a little center pin going on there just to make sure the fabric is shifting as little as possible as I move around. There's 3 layers here, so we're technically quilting. Okay, where are we? So you just want to make sure, let's make sure we're in the vision, that you have enough space there So you might even want to shift that a little bit over so that your piece, your tab, will be able to snugly fit in there, and you'll see what I mean when we progress. So here we go. We're working with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I like to keep my needle to go down. If you have one of those sewing machines, I always like the needle down in the down position when I end to be in control. So I'm going to lengthen my stitch a little. Just a straight up stitch. Move my pins as I need. Sew forward and back to give you a locked stitch as you begin, and then you're just going all the way around. So I might have lied to you. This may not be the 8 stitches total that I assumed. Maybe we're more. Count at the end. So if you see, I like to go over my corners farther than they need to be. Secures them in place and keeps them nice and crisp. I'll do the same there. If you're not sure what a 1/4 inch seam allowance is, just send me a message. Okay, so I've ended there. I like to save some of my thread by keeping my pieces closer together. So just move it a little bit out of the way. And now I know, gotta be careful where I place. I want to place a little visual eye marker there. Okay, so now that we're working with curves, this is why I want you to know more about using the needle and pivoting. So needle down in the fabric to start. And we reverse a couple. And then go forward. And anytime you come to a corner, so now I actually want to go further in here. So let me reverse, just deepen my seam allowance. Okay, so my pin's in there, my fabric's going, my threads are going. I know I can detach this piece, and I didn't waste a whole chunk of thread. These are some of my thread miser ways that we perhaps discussed at the beginning of this lesson. Okay, so you lift your presser foot. Just having a hard time keeping that focus there, guys. And then, so you lift it, do this like little foot dance. Step, 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 step. Once you see something kind of curling, lift your presser foot, shift it down again. That needle sticking down keeps all the threads in place for you to do that kind of work, and keeps the thread tension proper. So let's zoom along here. Just trying to maintain that 1/4 inch seam allowance. Do the best you can. If you know that this is too advanced for you, you don't want to deal with these types of corners, especially for just a little travel pack, just go ahead and make a circle. Avoid these little petals. If you want to challenge your skills or build skills, this is where it is. Practice makes perfect. Okay, pushing those needles, pins out of the way. You never want to stitch over your needles. One of these fancier machines, and I still don't care how good she would be over the needles. I'm not playing that game. I mentioned Mrs. Rodite earlier. She'd tell you some war stories at the sewing machine. I'll tell you that much. Zoom, zoom, zoom. Remember that? Remember that? Oh, gosh. I'm pretty sure it's decades ago. And long before. Ooh, 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 okay, ooh, that's fun. So, see, I just made a mistake because I was talking. I wasn't all the way down, so let me just make sure That's some of the deadly stuff that happens when you're sewing. This could throw off all the tension on your thread. So slow and steady wins the race. That's why turtle is my best friend. All right. Yep, let's stitch back, forward, just to make that crisp. Now, all that bulk is making these fabric fibers want to shift. So just be real cognizant of how things are coming on both sides. You don't want things shifting too much. Perhaps more pins would have been wise than me saying I knew what I was doing without all those pins, you know? Sometimes your ego gets in the way. Some life lessons as you sew. I have one of these fancy knee things, so I'll just let you know that that's how I'm going to do the rest of this. If you don't have one of those, you can just continue using the back. Something definitely shifted here, but that's okay. We'll work with what we've got and make it happen. Almost all the way around this mountain. Here she comes. Oh, what was I talking about? Zoom and the creators of Zoom? Who created Zoom? How old are they? Were they alive when Zoom 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 was a commercial on the TV? When there was a TV guide that you guys looked at, it was printed. Remember all these fun things, people? Remember when? Okay, let's go. We're on our last curve here. Beep, 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 beep. Boop, 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 boop. Okay, so remember, this is where I want to stop, and that's why I use the clips to make my little brain remember the difference between the clip and the pin. You could have used a pen to mark out the obvious there. Okay, so now let's lift our presser foot and we'll turn everything around. And we're back. So we want to separate just the fabric because remember this is the lining. So you can also clip your corners. You probably will want to just to make less bulk. Make sure you don't go into your stitches. And this is where this little tool could be handy. This is definitely more for elastic, but I thought it might have been handy. This little purple thing. That's actually not as strong as a pencil. Make sure you use the dull side of your pencil or the eraser point so you're not marking or harming your fabric in any way. So sharpen those edges with the tip. That's what this little purple thing could do too. Perhaps you even have some paper making tools or Your ruler could be handy here. You know, you'll figure it out. Alright, we might want to iron this. I would definitely want to top stitch it. So yeah, I totally tricked you about those stitch counts. Top stitching will always make something look super finished, and we'll see what that looks like at the end. Okay, remove these pins. Oh, look at that, cleaning up my space, and I see some rogue pins just flying around. No little four-legged creatures want to find that. No two-legged creatures want to find that in their foot any day. Okay. So turn it out. Turn up for what? Okay, sorry guys. I'm not even sure if I'm saying that right, but you know, this is Erica-isms we're talking. If you are lucky enough to hang out with me in real person, I told you all these sound effects are free. Okay, that was just a camera check. So remember that turnaround, that's what that pucker is right there. We're like screwed up. Well, we'll just fake it. We're gonna fake it till we make it, right? Finish this project. Okay, so I'm using the edge of my pencil just to smooth out those curves. Make sure all the fabric is tucked. You can clip, trim your edges if you want, but I kind of like this bulkiness. At least I'm saying that for this tutorial. Just to keep cruising along for you. Okay, so then we're gonna do the magic glue. You might want possibly to stitch this down or iron this down. We'll find out in just a moment. But basically, we're trying to squeeze this little tube, we'll say, our universal tube. Still some corners that I didn't touch. Alrighty. There we go. Tucky, tucky. Let's make sure we're all ready to go sleep there, guys. Alright, so then there's our little piece that will now become a unit. Alright. So now we need to pin this together. Now this is really thick on my side here, so I'm not even going to pin. I'm just going to stitch this. Alright, so it's a little cockeyed, but it's okay. I don't mind. And trim your threads. Make sure you don't harm your fabric. Alrighty. And there we go. Now we'll just have to top stitch this, which is going all the way around. But we're also going to add the Velcro. Some embroidery techniques I was working on a while ago. Alright, so the Velcro is going to be a big deal. We want to figure out exactly where the Velcro will lie. Okay, so when we fold it, It will lie right about there. There we go. So I'm going to just mark that this is the end of the flap. And oh, my little tab, there we go. Okay, and then you could decide which side you want the male or female portion of the fabric. My preference, let's see, I like to kind of remember. I like to have the rough side on the stationary surface and the soft side on the surface that is the tab, so that it doesn't scratch your body, you know, so that's you have to touch that more frequently. All right, so now I'm going to, before I do anything further, I want to stitch this in place. So I'm stitching that boy side down. It's the pokey side, guys. Okay. Ooh. Another remember when, hey, if this is the pokey side, maybe the other side really should be Gumby. Ha ha. I'm going to sew this square around, and then we'll come back to show the other side. Okay, stitching Velcro can be scary, but what's my motto? Slow and steady wins the race, just like the turtle or the tortoise in that old fable. Okay, needle down, engines rev, boom, here we go, people. You just sew, right? It's not that scary. I know so many people that this freaks them out. Just making a square. Just want you to see. If you zoom through this, yeah, anything's going to easily get screwed up, especially if you're a beginner. And nothing's totally ruined, unless you cut the fabric in the wrong spot, like I did earlier. But in fiber work, there's really nothing ruined because you could take that stitch out and then go back. Fresh stitches. I almost forgot to put the presser foot down. I wouldn't have called that an example. Okay, so there's our square. Now we just want to make sure we trim our threads. Ew. Hello. Okay. And then we have to, uh-oh, do I even remember? And so obviously you have to remember how you started assembling it. Okay, so then you get your alignment. I put this, the soft side or the the Gumby side or female side onto of Velcro onto its match, and now I'm trying to do this little tricky thing of just keeping it pinched there as I place a pin to demark where it needs to be. Boom, right? Pretty fancy, so that should essentially stay where it should go. We'll see in the final result. So I'll just stitch this on and be right back. So there it is so far. Velcro attached. And now we'll do the top stitching all the way around the edge border and then follow up with attaching this, and we're almost done. There you have it. There it is, top stitched around and looks a little bit closer to a finished product. So now what we have to do is attach the inner liner, which would be the bed for the needles. So Just finding where you want that positioning to be. Some of your curves and petals might, on the exterior layer, may not look as sharp as they did before, but that's okay. So now what you want to do is I'm going to mark with my ruler to make sure I'm getting a straight line, straight as I can, because now we're going to sew some straight lines directly across. This flower shape. Okay. Boo, boo, boo. So that's basically what we're doing with the thread. Make sure that we pin it on and everything in place. Ensuring there's no wrinkles and sections. I don't anticipate. More secure pinning, remember? Always remember. Alrighty. So, now we'll just zippity-doo over at the sewing machine and we are almost there. Well, if you're lucky like me, you ran out of bobbin thread. That's typically my forte when working with this little Nina girl here. Nina being my sewing machine. She almost always consistently runs out of thread on usually the last few stitches or runs of a project. And that, I think, is just the way it goes with sewists in the sewing machine. Okay, so I'm trying to be cheap and quick here with the thread miserly ways, but it's obviously defeating me, so I'll give up. Snip my threads as I go, because sometimes it drives me nuts to see them afterwards and have to deal with them. There are just a couple less threads to go. Alright, so now I'm going to go completely, hey, where are we? Perpendicular to that other line. We can barely see that, but just making a cross so that the fibers stay tight. Kind of creating a little tension, a little trampoline action going. Here's about where you would have already considered, and as you can see, maybe you wanted to work with a specific color contrasting thread, or maybe you even have a signature thread color that you like to use. I am just working with what I have. Oh, these are really dull at the ends, okay? Whenever you want to clip your threads, it's kind of like another forte or your own style. I do like to save the threads in a little bucket for future use. Upcycle when I can. Okay, 2 more stitches going across here, people. Alright, I never go that fast. That's the fastest you should ever drive your sewing machine. You want her to... Well, that's me. I'm a grandma driver. I was thinking of my fashion design friend that would say I drive too slow on the machine and in the car. Okay, 1 more stitch on the opposite direction. Making sure my threads are tidy and not crimped underneath my thread presser foot. Nice crisp cross line. Love it. All right. And there we go. I'll take this over in just a moment. Now we're on the last step of our little project here, taking our needle and thread that we previously threaded together. We're going to place our button on top. Now, you don't need the button. It's really just decorative. Perhaps you have a patch or something you'd want instead. You know, as I see, I might even decide to move that Velcro. And you might have noticed that as I designed this for you, that it could actually go in a different location. It doesn't bother me too much, but it probably will in the long run. But if I do that, when I move it, it will be seen, you know, through the other layers. So that's why I stitched it when I did. But hopefully you'll have better success in your studio. Something that looks more visually pleasing and maybe even closes tighter. But doesn't defeat that it is still a very functional creature. Yeah, right? Wow. Okay. Button. So you take the button, you figure out where your center is, and then I like to start with my thread. Let's separate those two. Snag your thread in there. Okay. Then grab your first hole, thread on down there, and see where you want that placement exactly. And now I'm going to go through the two, through down again. But I'm trying not to go through all the layers. I don't want to go through the Velcro there. Perhaps you would have sewn this on at a different time. If you have a suggestion, or think you know better, let me know. I always love ideas. There's more than one way to solve a problem. As long as it's not harming, you know what I mean, people? You know what I mean, Vern? You know what I mean? Do I have to pay copyright information fees for that? Oh dear. Who's that, Jim Varney? Don't be watching me, Jim Varney. I use you a lot. You know what I mean. Alright, so as you see, I'm just working through the stitches underneath aren't going to look really pretty. But this doesn't matter, just as long as it's, you know, really placed down. I like to stitch through the holes about 3 times each. So going in a crisscross pattern is my preference when it's 4 holes like this. This is where a thimble would come in handy. Surface of your table. Okay, so I've gotten just enough. This is not a super functional button, it's just decorative. So once you've done that, now you want to, this is what I learned, another little trick from Mrs. Rodite, my favorite teacher from high school. Wrap 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, let's go back just enough to create a little bit of a knob there. And then you catch the threads. Let's see, just underneath, catch a few threads, and then go through the loop, and now you have a knot. Ooh, and almost always it breaks right there for me. So hopefully that was successful for you. Secure your pin, trim your threads. And what's that, announcer? We have come to the end of an episode with Erica and Creation Station. There's your tutorial on a travel pincushion. I hope you enjoyed.